Hello and welcome to the UPSC Mains PYQ series by Shikara Academy. In this live answer writing series, we will be discussing the UPSC Mains question asked by UPSC over the past 10 years. Now, this will be a 2-day per week series, and on each session, we will be discussing the 5 previous year questions asked by UPSC. We'll start with the GS Paper 2, GS Paper 2 2024. Now, this particular question is the question number 1 asked in 2024 UPSC General Studies Paper 2. Examine the need for electoral reforms as suggested by various committees with particular reference to one nation, one election principle. A 10-mark question that we have to answer in 150 words. Now, if we match it with the syllabus, it has been asked from the subject of polity, and the topic is the salient features of Representation of People's Act, because the election reforms per se is not specifically mentioned in the syllabus. Our syllabus mentioned about the constitutional bodies, and for the election part of the syllabus comes under the features of the Representation of People's Act. This act and the associated reforms regarding the elections are very important from the examination point of view. Now, this question says us to examine the need for electoral reforms. The need for electoral reforms as suggested by various committees. So what the different committees that has been established by the government of India for reforming the election process in the country. And we have to give a particular reference with a particular specific reference to the one nation, one election, that is the simultaneous elections. We have to throw light on this simultaneous elections as well. Now think about for 1 or 2 minutes and see the approach that you will be writing for this approach that you'll be following while you are answering this particular question. So the approach here will be in introduction. So in introduction, if the introductory statement is given in the question, then in introduction we deal with the introductory line. If any introductory statement is given in the question, then that introductory statement is dealt with in the introduction of the answer. But here we are not given a introductory statement. Therefore, we'll write by writing about India's electoral system, and after the introductory line, we write a connecting line in order to connect the introduction, to make a bridge between the introduction and the body. So the basic purpose of writing the introduction is that we are telling the examiner what he or she might find or what he or she might look into the answer. Okay, what we are writing in the answer, that anticipation we are building in the introduction. Now the body, in body we address the demand. So the question's demand is addressed in the body. The question is demanding the need for electoral reforms, and the question has also said that we have to focus on the one nation, one election principle. Therefore, we will be writing the advantages of one nation, one election, or the simultaneous elections. And in summary, in conclusion, we summarize the answer. That is basically we tell the examiner that what we have already told them in the body in a very brief manner. And it should be forward looking. And so in the conclusion, we write a summary or a way forward. Writing the introduction, India's electoral system, while robust, faces frequent elections, high expenditure, and administrative burden. So these are the challenges. We have in the introductory line, we have write about the challenges that the electoral system in India is facing. That is, we have frequent elections of the Lok Sabha, elections of the state legislative assemblies, and the local bodies elections. Then These elections, it leads to higher expenditure. The government is spending more and more money because the troops are being deployed, the security forces are being deployed, and the entire election machinery is put into motion. Then there is administrative burden. So these are the challenges. Several committees like the Law Commission, the Election Commission, the Niti Aayog, and the Kovind Committee of 2023 have recommended to enhance efficiency, particularly through the one nation, one election concept. Because the question is asking about the various committees, so we have named various committees in the introduction itself. So the examiner get to know that okay, this particular individual now knows certain example of the committees, and he or she knows what he or she is writing. Now, starting to write the body, there is need for electoral reforms. Frequent elections disrupt the governance and led to the perpetual model code of conduct restriction. So whenever the elections are announced, this MCC, that is the model code of conduct, it comes into picture, and it leads to the governance disruption in many parts of the country. Also, the election expenditure is also rising. It is putting burden on the public exchequer. And we all know that in election there is rampant use of black money. So there is wide circulation of black money within the frequent. If the elections are becoming very frequent, if the elections are very frequent, then it encourages the use of black money. So frequent elections encourages black money. There is administrative fatigue due to the repeated deployment of officials and the security forces. The election officials are mainly the government staff, and the security forces, they are deployed from one place to another place and then again from place to place when the frequent elections they are taking place. Then there is the polarization and populism. They are, these are two evil peas that is hampering our democratic society. The polarization and populism. Polarization is not good for the social fabric of the country, and the populism is not good for the economic fabric of the country. Okay, the repeated election cycles, it encourages the polarization in order for the people to vote, like the political parties, they tend to polarize people in different based on their religion, based on their caste, their linguistic groups, and etc. So there is polarization and the populism, that is the schemes which are giving, uh, uh, providing the populist schemes such as giving cash incentive, giving cash directly into the bank account of females. So these are the populist schemes, populist measures, which are okay, popular for the masses, but on the public exchequer, on the economic strand of the country, these are not very healthy. Then we discuss the advantages of one nation, one election. Reduced costs. So first we have the high expenditure, high burden on the public exchequer because of the frequent election. Now, one election, one nation, one election, what it will do, it will reduce the cost of elections. Simultaneous polls lower the administrative and the financial expenditure because frequent deployment will not be there. Election machinery will only be deployed at once. Governance efficiency. It minimizes the policy paralysis due to frequent model. Now, if the election is taking simultaneously, there is no frequent imposition of the model code of conduct. That will enhance good governance, effective governance. So the governance efficiency will increase. Third, we have political stability. One nation, one election, it ensures the longer tenures, reducing the midterm disruptions. Fourth is the voter engagement, because what happens is because of the frequent elections, like after every 6 months or 1 year, if a person has to vote, it tends to create a voter fatigue in the it tends to create a fatigue in the voters. So if one nation, one election is implemented, if simultaneous elections are implemented, it may decrease the voter fatigue, and this will further boost the participation of the voters in the election process. Now, in conclusion, we can summarize and we can write a way forward that electoral reforms, especially the one nation, one election principle, are essential for a more efficient and cost effective, stable democratic process. However, successful implementation. So this is our summarizing line. And the second line, that is, however, the successful implementation requires, what it requires is broad political consensus, constitutional amendments, and careful logistical planning. This is our way forward line. So this is how a balanced answer should be there, covering all the things that are asked in the question, along with a proper introduction, as a systematic introduction, having the introductory line, the connecting line, and a conclusion, having a summarizing line and a forward-looking line. So moving on to the next question. Now this question number 2 of the same question paper. Explain and distinguish between Lok Adalats and arbitrational tribunals, whether they entertain civil as well as criminal cases. A 10-mark question. It has to be answered in 150 words. Mapping it with the syllabus, it has been asked from the subject of polity, that is statutory, regulatory as well as quasi-judicial bodies. Now, we have to explain and distinguish between Lok Adalats and arbitrational tribunals. Whenever we have to compare or distinguish between certain entities, it is a best way to use it using a tabular method. Okay. Now, in approach, since we are not given an introductory statement in the question itself, here we describe the Lok Adalats and the arbitrational tribunals, because the question is based on Lok Adalats and arbitrational tribunals. So we are defining we are describing what is a Lok Adalat, what is an arbitrational tribunal. Then in body, we differentiate between the Lok Adalats and arbitration tribunals, because this is the demand of the question, because the question is asking us to distinguish between the two. And we will be doing it using a table or a tabular method. In conclusion, we write the significance of the Lok Adalats and the arbitration tribunals, because we are not asked the recommendations, we are not asked the challenges, we are just asked to differentiate between the two. So first we will describe what a Lok Adalat is, what arbitration tribunal is, then we distinguish between two, and then in summary, in conclusion, we write the significance of both and will conclude the answer. So starting with the introduction, the Lok Adalats and the arbitrational tribunals are alternative dispute resolution mechanisms. This is the keyword. You have to write certain keywords in the answers to make it more attractive, or to make it sound more intellectual and not like the general public, the other students or other aspirants are writing. And these alternative dispute resolutions, what is their purpose? They are designed to resolve disputes outside the traditional courts. They aim for the speedy and cost-effective justice. However, they differ in their nature, jurisdiction, and types of cases they entertain. Here we have just described the alternative dispute resolution mechanisms, that is the Lok Adalats and the arbitration tribunals. In body, we compare the Lok Adalats with the arbitrational tribunals in a tabular manner in a table. Now, the nature of Lok Adalats, these are informal and conciliatory forums established under the Legal Services Authorities Act. This is very important, the statutory backing. Arbitrational tribunals are formal. So, Lok Adalats are informal, arbitrational tribunals are formal. These are quasi-judicial bodies governed by the Arbitration and Conciliation Act of 1996. So both of them are governed by two different statutory laws. Then the jurisdiction. The jurisdiction of Lok Adalat is that it handles civil cases. The civil cases are cases such as family dispute, land dispute, etc. And compoundable criminal cases like the minor offenses, where the parties can reach to a certain settlement. Okay. Compoundable offenses are those offenses in which the parties can settle down and can make an arrangement. Arbitration tribunals, on the other hand, the jurisdiction is primarily the civil cases involving commercial, contractual, and corporate disputes. And the arbitrational tribunals has no jurisdiction on the criminal offenses or the criminal cases. Lok adalats have certain degree of criminal cases it can have jurisdiction on, but not on the major offenses. The process the process in Lok adalats is informal because it is an informal mechanism, and the process is conciliatory. It emphasizes on mutual settlement through conciliation, and there is no strict procedural laws that apply. Arbitration tribunals, on the other hand, are very formal and they are adjudicatory. These are based on the arbitration agreements. Arbitrators hear evidence and pass the legally binding awards. The awards of the arbitration tribunals are legally binding. The cost of the Lok Adalats, there is no court fees for the people who are appearing in this Lok Adalats. If the fee is paid earlier, they are refunded. So it is free of cost. In arbitration tribunals, if the tribunal is set up, the parties who are the disputed parties who are facing each other in the arbitration tribunal, they bear the arbitration fee and legal costs. The binding nature, the decisions of the Lok Adalats are final, they are binding and equivalent to the civil court decrees, and no appeals is allowed. The decision of the Lok Adalats are final and binding with no appeals allowed. Arbitration awards that are given by these arbitrational tribunals, on the other hand, are binding. Both of them are binding, but these can be challenged in courts under limited circumstances. In Lok Adalats, they cannot be challenged in court, but in arbitration tribunals, the awards or the decree can be challenged in a court of law under limited circumstances. The voluntariness, that is, there is voluntary participation in the Lok Adalats. In case of arbitration tribunals, there is contractual agreement. If in the contract it is written that the parties will go to the arbitration tribunal for some disputes that may arise, then the parties has to go to the arbitration tribunals. Examples being the cases related to the matrimonial disputes, okay, so husband, wife, or the family disputes, the motor vehicle accident cases, and the negotiable instruments. That is the compoundable cases. In arbitration tribunals, commercial disputes like the Amazon Future Group arbitration case that unfolded during the COVID time are the examples of the cases in the arbitrational tribunals. Now, in conclusion, we write that the Lok Adalats, we give their significance. The Lok Adalats, they provide accessible justice by resolving both civil as well as minor criminal cases through amicable settlements, benefiting the common citizens, because the common citizens, no legal cost has to be borne by the citizen. Arbitration tribunals, they mainly cater to the commercial and civil dispute with the formal adjudicatory process, excluding criminal matters. Both of them play vital roles in reducing the court burden. So, what is their main significance? They reduce the court burden because the Indian courts are already very much burdened. More than 3 crore cases lies pending in the different courts in India. And what it ensures? It ensures the faster dispute resolution in the respective domains. Respective domains can be in the domestic laws or the civil laws and the commercial disputes that might be arising. Now, moving on to the next question, the question number 3 of the same question paper. The growth of the cabinet system has practically resulted in the marginalization of the parliamentary supremacy. Elucidate. Here we are given an introductory statement. And we have to build our entire answer by elucidating what it is written in the introductory statement only. Okay, a 10-mark question that we have to answer in 150 words. Now, mapping it with this syllabus, we see that it has been asked from the subject of polity, and it is not asked from one of a fixed topic. It has been asked from the parliament and the executive because it is talking about the cabinet system. Thinking for 1 minute, the approach that we should be taking in writing the answer to such a question. In introduction, we describe the cabinet system because the answer is inevitably, it is asking about the cabinet system. Then in body, we write the rise of the cabinet system and the features of the cabinet system. Also, we write the marginalization of the parliamentary supremacy. And in conclusion, we summarize the answer. We shall write in the introduction that cabinet system is a hallmark of parliamentary democracies, has evolved to become the central executive authority. Okay. The cabinet system is a hallmark of the parliamentary democracies, unlike the presidential democracy, and it has evolved. All in the cabinet system has evolved to become the central executive authority in the uh, state. While parliament is the theoretically supreme, the practical growth of the cabinet system has shifted the real power away from the legislature. We know that the parliament is supreme. The constitution is supreme. After that, the parliament is supreme. And the parliament has got the power to amend the constitution. So the supremacy of the parliament is there. But this is in the theoretical world. In the practical world, in the real world, what we are seeing is that in the current scope of things, there is practically the cabinet, the growth of cabinet has shifted the real power from legislature to the executive. Now we write the cabinet system, the rise and the features. The rise of the cabinet system, the centralization of power. The cabinet is led by the prime minister. It formulates the policies and controls the administration. So the policy formulation and the control of administration is done by the cabinet. And then there is collective responsibility. In a cabinet, the decisions are made collectively, often sidelining the individual parliamentary members. So the entire decision of the cabinet is taken like the collective decision, even if a couple of the cabinet members who are the members of the parliament themselves, if they are, if their opinion or their view can also be sidelined. Third is the control over legislation. The cabinet dominates the legislative agenda because the cabinet decides the agenda. It decides like which bills has to be introduced and for how long the session of the parliament has to run. Okay, so the cabinet system, the collective responsibilities, the centralization of power is there, the collective responsibility is there. The third thing is that it has a control over legislation. And the cabinet, we all know that it is accountable to the legislature, that is the parliament, or in case of India, actually the lower house of the parliament. The marginalization of the parliamentary supremacy. Why the parliament's supremacy is under threat? Because the reduced debate. Parliamentary debates are often limited as the ruling party's majority ensures the cabinet decisions prevail. Okay, this we are seeing over the in the last 5 to 10 years, or even before that, the quality of debate in the parliament, it has been going down. The duration of the debate is going down, and also the quality of the debate is also going down because the ruling party is ensuring that the cabinet decision, ultimately the cabinet's decision has to prevail in the parliament. Then there is party discipline. The whip system compels the members to vote along party lines, reducing the independent legislative scrutiny. Now, this whip system was introduced uh, in order to prevent the defection of the members of the parliament or members of the legislatures from shifting their allegiance to different political parties, from jumping political parties. But it has one limitation, that it has like what it has done, it is compelling the members of the parliament or members of the house to go along their party lines, their individual discretion, their individual parliamentary scrutiny, or like the members' scrutiny. The individual's viewpoint is getting diminished day by day. The importance of the individual's viewpoint is getting reduced day by day. Third is the question R weakening. There is weakening of the question R is the first R. We all know that the question R is the first R in the day when the parliament sitting is taking place. The cabinet is controlling the information flow. It is limiting the effective questioning by the parliament. Because of all these three reasons, we say that there is the marginalization of the parliamentary supremacy with the rise of the cabinet system. In conclusion, we summarize the answer that while parliament remains the supreme lawmaking body on paper, that is theoretically, the parliament is supreme. The practical dominance of the cabinet system has curtailed its supremacy. The cabinet's control over policy, legislation, and party members led to the marginalization of the true parliamentary oversight and debate. Okay, it has led to the decline of the parliamentary oversight and parliamentary debates. Moving on to the fourth question, that is the next question. The duty of the Comptroller and Auditor General is not merely to ensure the legality of the expenditure but also its propriety. Comment. Now we are given the introductory statement or the question statement is this. The question is asking about the CAG, the CAG, the roles and responsibilities of the CAG. A 10-mark question we have to answer in 150 words. Now mapping it with the syllabus, we can see that it is from the subject of polity and the topic is the powers, functions and responsibility of the various constitutional bodies. And we know that the Comptroller and Auditor General of India is a very important constitutional body. And here we have to discuss its powers and functions. Now the approach, it is a very straightforward question. Okay. So the approach will also be very straightforward. We will not be complicating things just for the sake of it. Okay. The answer shall be simple and to the point and objective. In introduction, we describe the office of CAG. In body, we write the duty, role or responsibilities of the CAG. And then in conclusion, we give the significance of the Comptroller and Auditor General of India. Okay. Let's see the answer. The Comptroller and Auditor General of India is a constitutional authority. You know that it is a constitutional authority responsible for auditing the government expenditure. The CAG's role extends beyond merely checking if the government spending is legal. It also involves assessing the propriety of such expenditure. Okay. So this is our statement question. That is, we have to give the arguments that the CAG, the role is not limited to ensure that all the expenditures are done in a legal manner. The responsibility of the CAG also extends to the area that it has to see the expenditure, the propriety of the expenditure. That is, it has to make sure that no irrelevant or excess expenditure or non-functional expenditure is taking place. Non-necessary expenditure, it has to avoid. So this is our introductory line. And the second line here will be the connecting line, because here we are signaling to the examiner that we will now address the demand of question by extending the line from the question itself. Now, the role of CAG in ensuring legality. The Comptroller and Auditor General examines whether the public funds are spent in accordance with the laws, rules, and regulations. Okay, it acts as a monitor. This ensures that the expenditures are authorized by the appropriative legislative bodies and follow a established procedures. The legality means that the CAG has to see whether the executive is making the expenditure, and that expenditure, in order to be legal, has to be passed or has to be authorized by the appropriate legislative body, be it at the center or at the state. Okay, the CAG has a jurisdiction over both the union government as well as the state governments. Then assessing the propriety, assessing the need, the necessity, whether that particular expenditure is required in the first place or not. That is propriety. Propriety goes beyond legality. It focuses whether the public money is used wisely and for the intended purpose. Okay, the purpose is, or the what I would say, the ends and the means, both of them are being examined by the CAG. The CAG evaluates whether the expenditures are necessary and justified. If the expenditures are not necessary, if they are not justified, then CAG will not give a will highlight it, even though that particular expenditure has been done according to the law passed by the parliament or by the state legislature. If the funds are used for the public good and not for the personal or political gain, the CAG also has to ensure that, okay, the expenditure is going on, but that expenditure should totally be focusing on the public good or the common good and not on the personal and political gain of certain politician or a political party. Third, whether the expenditures reflect the standards of financial prudence and integrity. So all the projects, all the expenditures shall be following the principle of financial prudence and integrity. In conclusion, we write the significance of the CAG's role. Okay, the CAG's dual duty. Dual duty is that legality as well as the propriety. It safeguards the public resources. So it safeguards the public resources. This comprehensive oversight, this oversight by the CAG promotes transparency, accountability, and responsible governance. That is actually the significance. Ultimately, if the CAG is doing its work effectively, then it leads to increased transparency, increased accountability, and increased responsible governance by the executive, and thereby it upholds the public trust in the financial administration of the country. Okay, this public trust, we can say that the CAG is the custodian of the public trust in the financial administrator of the administration of the country. Moving on to the discussion of the last question of the day. Question number 5. Analyze the role of local bodies in providing good governance at local levels and bring out the pros and cons of merging rural local bodies with the urban local bodies. A 10-mark question has to be answered in 150 words. Mapping it with the syllabus, we can see that it has been asked from the subject of polity, the topic being devolution of powers and finances up to local levels and challenges therein. So it is talking about the local bodies or local self-governments. And the question is asking, actually, it is asking three things. It is asking the role of local bodies. What is the role, what is the significance of local bodies in providing good governance at the local level? Okay, role of local bodies in good governance. So we have to link local bodies as well as the good governance. Then we have to discuss the pros and cons. So we have to, in for the urban areas, we have the urban local bodies like the municipalities, and for the rural local body, for the rural areas, we have the rural local bodies such as the panchayats. Now, the question is asking us to give the pros and cons of merging these two, the urban local bodies with the rural local bodies. Now, thinking 1 or 2 minutes about the approach of the answer. In introduction, we will be describing the local bodies. It will be a good practice to describe the local bodies. What are local bodies? In body, we address the demand of the question. Now, the demand of question is that the question is asking three things: the contribution of the local bodies to good governance. Secondly, it is asking about the pros as well as cons of merging rural and local bodies. Thirdly, we write a conclusion, a forward-looking conclusion, okay, or a way forward. Moving on to the introduction. Local bodies, they comprise the Panchayati Raj institution at the rural areas, and the urban local bodies, they are the foundation of the decentralized governance in India. Now, this decentralized Governance is the key word here. Okay. These local bodies are the institution for the decentralized governance in the country, and they ensure what they ensure. The significance is that they ensure citizen participation, they ensure accountability and efficient service delivery at the grassroots level, because it is at the local level, at the grassroots level. So it is these local bodies are best placed to enhance the citizen participation in the process of governance, to increase the accountability. Okay, because uh, uh, these local bodies, the representative in these local bodies, they are they work uh, in close proximity with the local population. So the local population has more access to their local representatives as when compared to their MLA or their member of parliament. And it ensures the effective, efficient service delivery at the grassroots level, because these local bodies, they function at the grassroots level. Then we write the contribution to the good governance. What is the contribution of these these local bodies in the good governance? So first is the democratic decentralization. It empower local communities to make decisions relevant to their needs. So local communities are now empowered to make decisions that has a effect on their needs, or that fulfills their needs. Okay, that is relevant to their needs. Because if there will be no local bodies, then all the decisions will be centralized, and the relevance or the particular needs of certain communities might not get fulfilled due to this. Second is the service delivery. It improves the access to the basic services like the access to water, the sanitation, health, and education. Then there is transparency and accountability because of the local oversight. It reduces the corruption and enhances the trust. Fourth is the inclusive development. The local bodies, they address specific needs of the marginalized groups through targeted schemes at the grassroots level. Now, discussing the pros and cons of merging the rural local bodies as well as the urban local bodies. The pros can be resource sharing. So, resource can be pooled. Pooling resources can improve infrastructure and services. Second is the integrated planning. It facilitates the holistic regional development. Now, if there is integrated planning, so in a region can have the urban areas, a region can also have the rural area. So both the areas are present in a region. Now, if we have to make a plan for the entire region, an integrated plan, so merging these rural local bodies and urban local bodies will enhance the integrated planning of the development of the entire region, holistic development of the entire region. Thirdly, it is about the administrative efficiency. It will reduce the duplication of efforts and streamline governance, because of the presence of these two parallel branches of the governance, that is the urban local bodies and the rural local bodies. There will be more manpower required, more administrative staff required. There will be duplication of efforts. So if a scheme, so if the district administration, if there is a district administration, it has to ensure that a scheme has to be implemented in the entire district. But for the implementation of in the urban area of the district, it has to approach a different local body. In order to implement that particular scheme in the rural areas, it has to then approach or coordinate with a different a different rural local body. Therefore, if these two are merged, the urban local bodies as well as the rural local bodies are merged, it will give the administrative efficiency. Now, what are the cons, the disadvantages of the merging rural as well as the urban local bodies? The loss of identity, local identity. The rural areas may be overshadowed by the urban priorities. Now, we can see that India is undergoing rapid urbanization. Okay, and the urban centers or the cities are our engine of growth. So the most focus of the government as well as the administration is on the urban priorities. Because of this, the rural issues, okay, they might get overlooked. Then there is complex administration. Diverse need may complicate policy implementation. Now, rural landscape as well as the urban landscape are two different areas. And the implementation of a certain scheme requires both these areas have their own diverse needs. If we are merging them, if we merge them, then for the administration, it will be a very complex task to implement that particular scheme in the in both areas simultaneously. If the separate local bodies are there, if the urban local body is separate, okay, that will specifically be implementing a scheme in the urban areas, and the rural local body is there, then it will be implementing that scheme in the rural area. But if we merge them both, then it will create complications. It will make the complex administration. Then there will be representation issue. Rural population might face underrepresentation because more and more people are now living in the urban areas. So a situation might arise that the rural population may feel that they are being underrepresented. In conclusion, we summarize, we give a way forward. We summarize by writing that the local bodies are crucial for participatory and responsive governance. This is our conclusion. While merging rural and local and urban local bodies offers efficiency, it will give us efficiency, but it must be balanced to preserve the local autonomy, okay, and address the unique community needs. The needs of the certain sections of the society or the certain regions, certain areas like the rural areas they should not feel that they are underrepresented or their needs or their concerns are overlooked. Okay. So that was our discussion. We have discussed 5 UPSC mains PYQs question in this session. In the subsequent session, we'll be taking the 555 questions and we'll be writing the answers. We'll be discussing the answers in the real time. Okay. For the 10-mark question that UPSC asks, you have effectively 7 minutes to answer that particular question. Okay.